Imagine waking up to an ordinary morning. You open your eyes and look at your phone, there is no internet. You want to turn on the light, the power is out. You get into your car to go to work, but navigation apps aren't working because there is no signal from the satellites. You want to buy fuel for your car or get some food from the grocery store, but the credit card machines are frozen. The banking system has completely collapsed. You do not need a massive fleet of fighter jets or a nuclear bomb to create this apocalyptic scenario where an entire country returns to the dark ages in seconds. All of this could be done by a cyber virus sent from a dark room, or perhaps even a single cable cut deep in the ocean. So, which exactly are those most critical infrastructures that keep the modern world standing, and why do we almost never see most of them in our daily lives? Is the world truly connected to a few veins that do not seem ready to break? Today, we are examining that delicate and hidden backbone of our civilization. To understand this dark scenario, we first need to define that famous term that states never stop talking about: critical infrastructure. Critical infrastructure is the name given to the entirety of systems that, when disrupted, hacked, or destroyed, instantly paralyze the normal functioning, security, and economy of society. When we look at cities, we see large buildings, shopping malls, or flashy bridges. However, when states and security experts look at the city, they see energy, water, communication, transportation, finance, and data. There is a very important emphasis here that should never be forgotten. In the modern world, what is truly critical is not individual buildings or stations. What is truly vital is that these systems are invisibly connected to each other. When one collapses, it pulls the other into the darkness with it. We must put electricity at the top of these connected systems. Because electricity is not just a type of energy that lights our lamps. It is the main domino piece of civilization. Electricity production, starting from dams or power plants, comes to substations through massive transmission lines, and from there reaches our homes. This giant network must operate with a perfect frequency balance of 50 Hz per second. So, what happens if the power grid collapses? Your house staying in the dark is the smallest problem. If there is no electricity, the giant water pumps that pump water to the city stop, and you are left without water. The generators of the data centers that provide the internet run out in a few days, and communication is completely cut off. Traffic lights and subways in the city stop. Hospital support units go silent. Pumps at gas stations do not work, and cars are stranded on the road. As you can see, the first domino of the modern world is always electricity. When it falls, the game is over. We come to that invisible power in second place, perhaps the world's greatest illusion. The internet. Most people associate the internet with satellites in the sky and think that signals come through the air. However, this is a huge misconception. More than 95% of this video you are watching, the emails you send, and global data traffic pass through undersea fiber optic cables, laid on the ocean floor, only about the thickness of a garden hose. The internet does not live in the sky, it lives at the cold, dark, and pressurized bottom of the oceans. Ship anchor accidents and intentional cable cuts in the Taiwan Strait or the Strait of Hormuz in recent years have shown us again, in a very painful way, how dangerously fragile this invisible infrastructure is. The fate of the global digital economy is left to the mercy of fish and ship anchors. When those cables at the bottom of the ocean reach land, they enter giant, windowless, and cold concrete buildings. These are data centers. In the past, these buildings were seen only as boring hardware rooms where websites were stored. Today, however, the situation is completely different. The cloud services that store all your photos, those famous artificial intelligence algorithms that change the world, millions of dollars of financial transactions in banks, and a country's most secret government services like e-government are entrusted to the data centers of companies like Amazon Web Services, Google, or Microsoft. Our entire lives are recorded on disks spinning on shelves inside these buildings. That is why, recently, countries of the world no longer accept and discuss data centers as just company buildings, but directly as critical national security facilities that must not be attacked. Let's leave the cables and buildings and turn our heads back to the sky. Most people think satellites are just about television broadcasts at home. However, these machines in space are silent heroes. That little blue location icon on your smartphone or in your car's map app is actually directly connected to the GPS infrastructure and satellites in space. Farmers and logistics ships receive weather forecasts from these satellites. Global banks and stock exchanges draw time synchronization with a precision of 1/1,000,000,000 of a second from the atomic clocks of satellites to distinguish two transactions from each other and operate the system perfectly. Military missiles finding their targets and cargo ships in the open seas not losing their way depend on these silent machines in the sky. Another system that is rarely talked about but whose absence is felt in the first second is the water infrastructure. Dams, massive treatment plants, pump stations that push water hundreds of kilometers away, and main distribution lines passing under cities. We think of water as something that just flows when we turn on the tap. However, when that electricity grid I just mentioned collapses, or when cyber hackers hack the computer of a water treatment plant and change the chemical ratio in the water, a whole city becomes uninhabitable in one day. Civilization begins not with credit cards or the internet, but with clean water. And the infrastructure that provides that clean water is the weakest belly of modern man. Another circulatory system as vital as water is money. We no longer live in an era where salaries are carried in sacks or physical banknotes. Money consists only of the numbers we see on the screen and digital signals. The financial system relies entirely on payment networks, data connections, massive clearing systems, and time synchronization from those satellites. A failure of a few hours in the financial infrastructure cannot be dismissed just like an internet outage. People cannot receive their salaries, companies cannot make payments, and this situation turns into a massive economic trust crisis within minutes. In an economy where trust is lost, digital numbers have no meaning. When we think about all these terrifying and fragile structures, it becomes much easier to understand why these facilities are kept secret. Why aren't the places where undersea cables come ashore, the details of massive substations, or the floor plans of data centers shown to the public in detail? There is no need to look for a dark conspiracy theory behind this. The answer is completely simple security logic. This data is hidden to reduce the sabotage risks of malicious terrorist organizations, to make international cyber attack preparations difficult, and not to create a physical strategic vulnerability against enemy countries. The main rule is this: not everything is completely secret, but not every detail is left open to everyone. It is much harder for an enemy to destroy something if they don't know where it is. However, to provide balance, we must also state a fact. It is, of course, impossible to completely hide a dam or a massive substation from the world in this age of satellites. The existence, address, and general function of many infrastructures are known in general terms. However, the sensitive connection points within that system, software architectures, backup topologies, and fine engineering maps showing which secret lines electricity will be diverted from in moments of crisis are shared in a limited way, only with the highest level officials. States do not hide the building, but they hide the veins leading to the heart of that building. Let's come to the most striking part, the choke points, which are the nightmare of cybersecurity experts and strategists. If you want to cut the internet of an entire country, you don't need to cut the internet cables of millions of homes one by one. It is enough to find that small cable landing point where all those cables merge before entering the sea. Or, instead of tens of thousands of transformers, you hit that large and key transformer node that connects two giant cities. To collapse global trade, you don't need to sink every ship. It is enough to block critical ports and canals like Suez or Panama. Sometimes the world's largest and most powerful systems are dependent on the smallest and most vulnerable nodes. Perhaps the real question we should ask is this: there were roads and electricity in the past too. Why exactly are we more fragile today than ever before? Because we live in an incredibly hyper-connected and centralized world compared to the past. Our digital dependency is higher than ever in history. And unfortunately, in recent years, these critical infrastructures are being put under very intense pressure simultaneously by massive climate crises, cyber threats from international hackers, and geopolitical tensions between countries. In the past, a storm would only knock down a tree. Today, when a storm hits a data center, a stock exchange thousands of kilometers away can collapse. Let's briefly summarize the domino effect created by this hyper-connected world. The power grid collapses because of a winter storm. Because the electricity is gone, the data center in that region goes offline. Because the data center is closed, credit card and payment systems fail. Because payment systems fail, logistics companies cannot get fuel for their trucks and slow down. Because logistics slow down, food and medicine do not reach markets, and the supply chain breaks down. In other words, the problem we face is not just the collapse of a single institution, but the fatal shaking of those modern systems that are tightly wrapped around each other. A chain is only as strong as its weakest link. That is why, today, undersea cables and massive energy networks are not just economic issues for private companies to make a profit. States view this issue as national security, crisis management, deterrence, and the ability to survive in a time of possible war. No matter how many large weapons your armies have, if your country's electricity or communication infrastructure collapses with a cyber attack, you cannot even give an order to take those fighter jets off the ground. Infrastructure is the armor of a modern state. When the armor is pierced, the body remains defenseless. After laying out this entire dark map, we should conclude with the real and biggest question. Perhaps the question we should ask ourselves is not what states are hiding from us or what is hidden on maps. Perhaps the real frightening question is this: how little of that modern life we live in, use every day, trust, and think is indispensable do we really see? Perhaps the real power of the modern world is not in those giant glowing skyscrapers or luxury streets. Perhaps the real power lies in those dark cables we don't see, in the transformers on mountaintops, in closed data centers, and at the dark bottom of vast oceans. A civilization can sometimes break not where it seems strongest, but at those silent connection points where it is most invisible. So, what do you think about this? How soon do you believe this domino effect would knock on your door if an infrastructure crisis occurred in your own city or country? Share your thoughts and concerns with us in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to continue discovering the secrets of the unseen world.